Carl Jung's secret, self-respect is the key to all respect. We live in a world obsessed with validation. The likes, the shares, the messages, the attention, it's all become currency for how we measure our worth. But if we're being honest, how often do we stop and ask, what am I really chasing? It's not just compliments, it's not just approval. What we're actually desperate for is respect. And not just from others, but from ourselves. The truth that Carl Jung kept returning to, again and again, bringing in his exploration of the human soul, is that respect from the world means absolutely nothing if it doesn't echo something we already feel inside. External respect without inner self-respect is just noise, momentary, fragile, and ultimately hollow. Now here's the paradox. We often believe that once we're respected by others, we'll finally respect ourselves. But Jung would tell you that's backward. Respect from others doesn't generate self-respect, it reflects it. In fact, Jung's entire system of individuation is built on the idea that your unconscious knows when you are lying to yourself. And the parts of you that you disown, betray, or abandon for the sake of external validation don't go away. They go underground. They become shadow. And shadow is what sabotages real self-respect.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So what is self-respect really? Most people confuse it with confidence. But confidence can be faked. Self-respect can't. Self-respect is not loud. It's not flashy. It's not aggressive. It's quiet. Solid. It shows up in the decisions no one sees. The boundaries you uphold when there's nothing to gain. The values you honor even when they cost you something. The moment you walk away from what you want because you know it's not what you deserve. That's self-respect. And Jung understood something radical. You cannot truly individuate, you cannot become whole without anchoring yourself in that kind of integrity. But here's where it gets even deeper. Why is it so hard to respect ourselves in the first place? It's not because we don't try, it's because we're at war within. Jung believed that the human psyche is not one thing. It's many voices, many archetypes, many needs. There's the inner child, the warrior, the lover, the rebel, the critic. And these forces are often in conflict. You want to say no, but your inner child is afraid of being abandoned. You want to speak your truth, but your shadow fears rejection. So you stay silent. You say yes when you mean no. You let yourself be used. You betray your own boundaries and then you wonder why you feel hollow afterward. But the real reason you feel that way is this: a part of you is watching, always, a deeper self. The one Jung called the self with a capital S. It's the center of your psyche, the one that's not swayed by ego or fear. And it knows when you sell yourself out. It doesn't punish you, but it withdraws. That's why you feel that emptiness, that strange sense of being disconnected from your own soul. Because you are. Every time you betray your values for approval, your self steps back. Not out of spite, but out of sadness. Let that sink in. What if the deepest part of you is silently waiting for you to return to your own standards? This is where the concept of shadow work becomes essential. Jung's entire philosophy rests on the idea that you cannot gain real power in life unless you become conscious of your unconscious motives. The people you let disrespect you, that's not just a mistake, it's a mirror. They're revealing where you still haven't stood up for your own worth. They're showing you the part of your psyche that still thinks love must be earned through self-erasure. And unless you face that pattern, you'll keep attracting people who treat you like a backup plan because, deep down, that's how you treat yourself. Now, let's bring it into the real world. Think about the last time someone disrespected you. Maybe they ignored your boundaries. Maybe they lied. Maybe they simply treated you like you didn't matter. What did you do? Did you speak up? Did you walk away? Or did you tolerate it and call it being the bigger person? There's a difference between patience and self-betrayal, and the line between them is drawn by self-respect. This is what makes Jung's insight so powerful and dangerous. He's not saying you need to be respected to feel whole. He's saying you need to become whole, and then the right people will recognize your worth without you needing to perform for it. That flips the game entirely. Suddenly, the respect you're chasing isn't something you get. It's something you generate. And the more you live in alignment with your true self, the less you tolerate anything that dishonors it. So, here's the challenge Jung would give you. Don't ask, how do I get others to respect me? Ask, where am I still disrespecting myself? Because the way you treat your own soul is the standard you set for everyone else. The mirror of respect, why they treat you exactly how you treat yourself. Have you ever wondered why certain people keep showing up in your life with the same disrespectful patterns, even though you keep trying to change yourself to be more agreeable, more loving, more patient? It almost feels cruel, like you're doing your best, and yet they take more, ignore more, demand more. But here's a brutal truth that Carl Jung would have laid before you with chilling clarity. People don't treat you the way you deserve. They treat you the way you signal you expect to be treated. And those signals aren't always conscious. They radiate from deep within, from the parts of you you've either integrated or neglected. But Jung teaches us that the outer world is a mirror, and it doesn't reflect your fantasies or your intentions, it reflects your actual relationship with yourself. This means every disrespect you tolerate from others is also a reflection of the disrespect you allow internally. Not consciously, not intentionally, but energetically, psychologically. Think about it. If someone criticizes you unfairly and you say nothing, your silence isn't just peacekeeping. It's agreement. Not with the insult, but with the idea that your truth is not worth defending. And if this happens repeatedly, but you're training your nervous system to believe that silence equals safety, and simultaneously training others to believe that silence equals permission. Over time, this becomes your identity, the agreeable one, the understanding one, the one who absorbs the blow to keep the peace. But what Jung warns is this: there is no peace if your self is constantly being suppressed. That suppression festers, turns inward, and mutates into shame, anxiety, even depression. So the question becomes, what am I unconsciously teaching others about how to treat me? Are you signaling that your time is cheap because you never say no? That your love is unconditional even when it's unreciprocated? That your needs are optional because you're always fine? Here's what's terrifying. You may be sending these signals without realizing it, because you haven't yet examined your inner template, the internal script that says, "This is how much I matter." That script was usually written in childhood, long before we had the wisdom to question it. Jung would encourage us to dig there, into the roots, into the unconscious patterns formed when we were too young to defend ourselves and too innocent to understand that love should never have to be earned. Many of us grew up learning that attention was conditional, that being ourselves might be too much, that needing things made us a burden. So we adapted. We learned to shrink, to appease, to become hyper-aware of others' emotions while disconnecting from our own. And now, as adults, we find ourselves surrounded by people who coincidentally mirror the same emotional abandonment or control we once survived. But Jung would say this isn't coincidence. This is the psyche's way of showing you your wound over and over until you finally stop trying to be lovable and start being whole. But what does wholeness actually look like? It doesn't mean perfection. It means integration. It means knowing your worth not from what others reflect back, but from a fierce inner alignment. A willingness to disappoint others to remain true to yourself. A refusal to beg for breadcrumbs of validation when you know you are the feast. And here's the kicker: the moment you start living this way, truly respecting your own energy, your time, your heart, the world shifts. The mirror changes. The people who once took advantage of your silence either leave or evolve. And the ones who enter your life can only meet you at the level you meet yourself. This is where the spiritual becomes practical. Because when you reclaim your boundaries, you're not just protecting your peace, you're re-educating the world on how to engage with you. You stop attracting projects and start attracting partners. You stop being the emotional dumping ground and start being the source of clarity. You become a standard not in arrogance but in quiet, grounded truth. But here's a deeper layer that Jung would whisper. Sometimes people disrespect you not because they don't value you, but because your self-respect threatens their own unconscious self-betrayal. Your boundaries feel like rejection. Your clarity feels like control. Your self-love reminds them of everything they've ignored in themselves. And so they push back. They test you. They try to pull you into the old dance. Because if you play small again, they won't have to level up. This isn't personal, it's psychological. And recognizing this can give you the strength to stand firm without becoming cruel, to love without self-erasure, to see their pain without making it your responsibility. Jung didn't just want us to become strong. He wanted us to become real. And realness requires confrontation not with others, but with the shadows within. The parts of us that learned survival through people-pleasing, self-abandonment, and emotional discounting. The parts that still whisper, if I just love them enough, maybe they'll finally see me. But the real liberation comes when you realize it was never about them seeing you. It was always about you seeing you. And when you finally see yourself clearly, something sacred happens. You no longer beg for respect, you radiate it. And in doing so, you shift from being someone others tolerate to someone they reverence. Not because you demand it, but because your very presence makes it the only acceptable currency. Why Jung says boundaries aren't walls, they're mirrors that reflect the soul. Most of us were taught that boundaries are walls, harsh, cold, distancing barriers meant to push people away or keep them out. And because of this misconception, many of us resist setting them, fearing they make us look selfish, unloving, or distant. But Carl Jung offers a radically different insight. He would argue that boundaries, when rooted in self-knowledge, are not barriers at all, they are mirrors. They reflect not what we're trying to keep out, but what we have come to understand and protect within. A boundary is not a declaration of war, it's an act of self-reverence. It says, this is who I am. This is what I value. This is the sacred ground I stand on. And yet so many people fail to set boundaries not because they're weak, but because they're unsure of what their soul truly requires. You can't protect what you haven't yet identified. And this is where Jung's concept of individuation becomes powerful. To individuate is to dive deep into your unconscious, and begin distinguishing who you really are from who the world told you to be. It's not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's not detachment for the sake of being aloof. It's a profound confrontation with the self, where you strip away social masks, inherited expectations, and survival personas to discover your original blueprint. And once you've touched that inner truth, once you've seen it, known it, honored it, you can't unsee it. You begin to feel what doesn't belong to you, what feels wrong in your body, what steals your peace even when your mouth is smiling. And then, without bitterness or blame, you begin to draw lines. Not because you hate others, but because you've finally stopped hating yourself. You begin to say no not because you're angry, but because your yes is now sacred. You no longer chase validation because you've stopped being at war with your own worth. This is what makes boundaries so deeply philosophical and so misunderstood. Jung would say the ego, when immature, sees boundaries as either rigid defenses or desperate demands. But a mature ego, aligned with the self, sees boundaries as a form of dialogue. When you say this behavior is not okay, you are not shutting down connection, you are clarifying the terms on which real connection can even happen. Because without boundaries there is no intimacy, only enmeshment, only performance, only exhaustion masquerading as love. But here's the deeper part Jung would ask us to explore. What parts of ourselves fear boundaries the most? Often, it's the inner child who learned that love must be earned through self-sacrifice, that being liked was safer than being real, that abandonment was always one honest word away. And so we grew up terrified that saying no would mean rejection, that asserting ourselves would mean punishment, that making someone uncomfortable would mean being alone. And so we built a life based on emotional negotiations, quietly bending so no one would break. Jung calls this living through the persona, a mask crafted to survive, but incapable of thriving. True healing, then, comes when we grieve this mask, not shame it, not destroy it, but thank it for helping us survive, and then gently take it off. We start to speak from the self, not the wounded child, not the scared ego, but the integrated soul. And from that place, boundaries flow naturally. We no longer over-explain, because we are no longer asking for permission to exist. We no longer justify our needs, because we have met them first ourselves. We no longer wait for others to validate our worth, because we have seen it in our own mirror. And ironically, when we live this way, we become safer not just for ourselves, but for others. Because people always sense when your boundaries are real. They feel the clarity. They feel the integrity. And even if they don't like it, they respect it, or they leave, which is also a form of respect. Jung would say the unconscious always recognizes truth, even if the ego resists it. So when you speak from yourself, you awaken the truth in others, even if that truth threatens the lies they've been living. This is why setting a boundary isn't just an act of emotional hygiene, it's a spiritual revolution. It's how you declare, without needing to shout, that your life is not a public park for anyone to wander through. It's a temple, and only those who remove their shoes and honor the space are welcome to enter. So, the next time you feel guilty for protecting your peace, remember this: a boundary is not something you use to control others. It is something you use to reveal yourself. It is not a fortress, it is a mirror. And the more clearly you reflect who you are, the more clearly the world knows how to love you. The sacred cost of self-respect, why you must be willing to be misunderstood. There is a strange silence that follows a declaration of self-respect. That when you begin to say no, when you stop apologizing for your presence, when you finally choose peace over people-pleasing, that silence isn't just others pulling away, it's the echo of the old self dying. The part of you that always yielded, that always tried to smooth things over, that always believed your value came from how digestible you were to others. Carl Jung warned that individuation, the path toward wholeness, is not a comfortable journey. It's a pilgrimage through misunderstanding, a path where many will mislabel your growth as selfishness, your truth as arrogance, and your boundaries as coldness. And this is the price of becoming who you truly are. To gain your self-respect, you must risk losing the illusion of harmony. You must risk being seen through the lens of someone else's projections. You must accept that some people were only drawn to the version of you that never said "I matter." But ask yourself, is respect that's only granted to your silence really respect? Or is it manipulation disguised as love? You see, most people don't fear your growth because it harms them. They fear your growth because it shatters the roles they built their identity around. When you start living with integrity, you stop reinforcing their delusions. You stop playing small to make them feel big. You stop shrinking yourself so they don't have to face their own unexamined lives. And this terrifies the ego, not just theirs, but your own too. Because your ego has been trained to believe that safety comes from fitting in, from being understood, from keeping everyone pleased. But Jung reminds us that transformation is often lonely. The caterpillar doesn't turn into a butterfly in a crowd, it dissolves alone, inside the dark cocoon. Your awakening may cost you invitations, approval, or applause. But what you gain in return is something unshakable, the ability to look in the mirror and feel peace. And that peace, fueled not by performance, but by presence, is the seed of true power. So what if they misunderstand you? So what if they call you cold, distant, aloof? These are just the labels of those still trapped in emotional codependency, still hoping you'll return to the role they assigned you. But you are not their idea of you. You are not their comfort zone. You are not here to be a supporting character in their drama. You are here to become whole, to become honest, to become free. The truth is, most of us want liberation without disruption. We want to be true to ourselves and still be universally liked. But this is the greatest myth of all, that self-respect and social approval can always coexist. Sometimes you will have to choose. And when that moment comes, Jung's wisdom asks you, will you betray yourself to be understood? Or will you honor your soul, even if it means walking alone? Because here's the paradox: when you respect yourself deeply enough to be misunderstood, you eventually attract relationships that no longer require you to dim your light. You find people who meet you where you are, not where you're convenient. You find conversations that nourish, not deplete. You find intimacy that doesn't punish your authenticity, but thrives on it. And that, in the end, is why self-respect is not arrogance, it is alignment. Not separation, but sacred selection. And if you must lose a few shallow bonds to gain a short-deep peace, then that is not a loss. That is a homecoming. That is you finally becoming what you were never meant to hide. Because Carl Jung didn't just want us to be accepted. He wanted us to be whole. And wholeness, my friend, has never required anyone else's permission.